Bill Barr is following the law, and what's his reward? Democrats are going to hold him in contempt. I don't think today's actually about getting information. I don't think it's about getting the unredacted Mueller report. I don't think last week's hearing was actually about having staff question the Attorney General. I think it's, as my colleague said earlier, I think it's all about trying to destroy Bill Barr because Democrats are nervous he's going to get to the bottom of everything. He's going to find out how and why this investigation started in the first place. Never forget what Bill Barr said a few weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago, when he testified in front of the Senate Finance Committee. Said a lot of important things, but he said four very interesting things. First, he said there was a failure of leadership at the upper echelon, term he used, upper echelon of the FBI. We all know that's the case. Director Comey's been fired. Deputy Director McCabe fired, lied 3 times under oath, according to the Inspector General. FBI counsel Jim Baker demoted and left, currently under investigation by the Justice Department. Lisa Page demoted and left. Peter Strzok, Deputy Head of Counterintelligence, demoted and fired. Peter Strzok, the guy who ran the Clinton investigation and the Russian investigation. There was certainly a failure of leadership at the upper echelon of the FBI. Second thing the Attorney General said 3.5 weeks ago in front of the Senate Finance Committee. Spying did occur. Said it twice. Yes, spying did occur. Third, he said, there's a basis for my concern about the spying that took place. And maybe the most interesting thing, 2 terms he used that frankly I find frightening. He said there was, in his judgment, he thinks there may have been unauthorized surveillance and political surveillance. Scary terms. We got to go back to January 3rd, 2017. Senator Schumer on the Rachel Maddow show talking about then President-elect Trump says this: if you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. Now, I don't know if the FBI went after President Trump in 6 ways, but I sure know they went after him in 2 ways. And the first one is the now famous dossier. On October 21st, 2016, the FBI used one party's opposition research document as the basis to go to a secret court to get a warrant to spy on the other party's campaign. That happened. Democrat National Committee, the Clinton campaign, paid Perkins Coie law firm, who hired Fusion GPS, who then hired a foreigner, Christopher Steele, who did what? Talked to Russians and put together this salacious, unverified document that became the basis to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. They did it. And when they went to the court, they didn't tell them important things like who paid for it. They didn't tell them that Christopher Steele had already told the FBI and the Justice Department that he was, quote, desperate to stop Trump. And they didn't tell the court that Christopher Steele had been fired by the FBI because he's out talking to the press. They did that. And second, just last Thursday, New York Times story, FBI sent investigator posing as an assistant to meet with the Trump aide in 2016. FBI sent someone in, pretending to be somebody else, to talk with George Papadopoulos, who was with the Trump campaign. You know what they call that? You know what they call that? It's called spying. They did it. They did it. They did it twice, and who knows how much more. And what I know is Bill Barr has said he's going to get to the bottom of it. And think about the term he used again. This is important. Political surveillance in the United States of America. I will not yield. Think about that term. He's going to get to he said he's going to put a team together, going to investigate all this. This is critical. And never forget the guy who ran this investigation, Peter Strzok, ran the Clinton investigation and then launched and ran the Trump-Russia investigation. Never forget what he said. Trump should lose $100 million to $0. We need an insurance policy. Told Lisa Page, don't worry, Lisa, we'll stop Trump. This is what Bill Barr wants to investigate. And as my colleagues have said, this is the House Judiciary Committee, with the history this committee has in protecting fundamental liberties and protecting the Constitution. Last week there was another important document Emmett Flood sent to the Attorney General. I just want to read a couple sentences. Under our system of government, unelected executive branch officers and intelligence agency personnel are supposed to answer to the person elected by the people, the president, and not the other way around. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's a matter of having a government responsible to the people, to we the people. In the partisan commotion surrounding the Mueller report, it would be well to remember that what can be done to a president can be done to any of us. And this committee is supposed to look out for that fundamental fact more than anything else. And we are not doing that today. I yield back.
I would simply observe that, to his credit, Mr. Jordan has been second to none in asking for access to the materials we're asking for the. And I simply ask him: does he still think we ought to, is he still supporting his own request for that the committee and the Congress be given access to the entire report and the underlying information?
Consistent with the law, and I would ask the chairman. My understanding is Mr. Mueller's going to be here next week. Why are we doing it? You're going to get to ask the guy who wrote the whole darn document. We're all going to get asked him questions. Why don't you hold off on this contempt until at least the guy who wrote the thing spent 22 months and $35 million with a whole bunch of Democrat lawyers putting it together? Why don't you wait and ask him next week before we do this contempt resolution?
I'll answer, well, essentially because it would be useful to read the material before we have him in front of us.
So a lot of breaking news tonight. The DOJ sending this letter moments ago saying in light of the threatened contempt citation against the Attorney General, the AG will ask the president to consider invoking executive privilege over the material that Democrats are demanding to see. So what happens next in this chess game? Luckily, we've got two experts with us, National Security Attorney Bradley Moss and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General John Yoo. Great to have both of you tonight.
Thank you, Shannon.
We were going to talk about this House committee contempt vote that is scheduled against the AG in the morning. The DOJ is saying, please hold off on it because now we're going to ask the president to consider executive privilege over these materials. What do you make of it, John?
Well, this is a rapid escalation in this constitutional conflict. Usually this kind of letter, the subpoenas would take months, if not maybe a year to get to this point. You're really seeing both sides already going to their most aggressive constitutional positions. Now, what's happened in the past, and I've worked on both sides, in the Congress side and the executive branch side on these issues. Usually what you do is you negotiate and come to some kind of accommodation where, for example, you would make the report available in a secret room where you couldn't take notes and so on. But it looks like both sides actually want to go to their extreme arguments and not reach any kind of compromise at all. Maybe you have to go to court, and this could go on for years.
Yeah, and maybe that's the idea. You never know what the calculation is, because today we know that there were meetings between DOJ staff for Chairman Nadler, and they were trying to work out some additional details about getting to see more of the report. Staffers, other people could look at the report. It would have a wider audience. But apparently that didn't happen. So now we're here. We're potentially invoking the executive privilege. Interesting to me that they include in this letter referring to a Democrat here. And they say, the committee has forced us to this, but they say President Clinton, acting on the advice of Attorney General Janet Reno, made such a protective assertion of privilege in similar circumstances. So Bradley, you can see they're trying to say, hey, this is nonpartisan. It's an executive privilege issue.
Yeah, they're going to get, sideswiped a little bit by a ruling that came out during the Obama administration in Fast and Furious when he tried to invoke executive privilege. If they try to broadly and categorically invoke it here, as the Attorney General has, suggested in this letter, they're going to run into the ruling that came out in Fast and Furious where the district court stated that because of original previous official disclosures, the sum and substance had already come out. It undercut the department's argument, it undercut its ability to so broadly withhold information. I have no doubt that some of this could still be withheld under executive privilege. But if we do, as John mentioned, if this does end up in litigation, there's going to be a pullback on both sides a bit. There's going to be some more of this that comes out. And this is really just political posturing.
Well, and the thing is that we've talked about this multiple times. First of all, Chairman Nadler is smart. I mean, he is an attorney. He knows that there's a lot of this that could not be turned over by the Attorney General, even if he was 100% willing. He can't give out grand jury material. I mean, it's against the law. And secondly, they've offered Chairman Nadler and other Democrats and Republicans the chance to come see this less redacted version, and he hasn't taken them up on it. So, John, where do we go from here?
So I think you made some very good points in there. I think Chairman Nadler pulled the trigger too quickly on the subpoena. He can't subpoena the Justice Department to do something illegal, and that illegal act would be to hand over grand jury information. So actually, by acting precipitously, he has put Barr in actually a much superior constitutional position than he would normally be in. And so actually you could see the executive branch saying, great, Nadler's overreached. He's asking for too much. We know we will win in court on the grand jury information. We will probably win in court on the classified information. So fine, you want to take your best shot? We'll go right to court right now in these arguments. The way it's supposed to work is over a period of months, they should get closer and closer to reaching a deal. But because Nadler put out such an extreme position, you could see Barr and the Justice Department saying, fine, you want to fight on this turf? The second one, and just a little bit of difference with Bradley, the Supreme Court has never ruled on any of this. They have said there's an executive privilege. They've never ruled on this kind of law enforcement information privilege. They have ruled on grand jury in the executive branch's favor. So there's not much precedent out there. So if you're the executive branch, why not put the Congress to the test? I think that Congress has the tougher argument to make because they went too quickly.
Bradley, does it end up at the Supreme Court? Will I be covering it over there?
But with President Trump, everything almost always ends up at the Supreme Court. That's where he likes to bring it in the end. So yeah, I would assume so at this point.
I mean, I never thought that I would use my law degree and my years in legal practice as much as I do in the news, but we're glad that the true experts were here tonight. Thank you both.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Shannon.